Benny Bear and Ruby Rabbit, and the snow day surprise. Snow had fallen overnight in Pinecone Forest, blanketing every tree, trail and rooftop in sparkling white. Benny Bear woke up and peeked outside his window. "Snow day," he cheered, pulling on his red scarf and fuzzy boots. Just as he opened his cabin door, a snowball hit him squarely on the nose. Plop! "Gotcha!" laughed Ruby Rabbit, poking out from behind a snow-covered bush. She wore a blue puffer coat and snowflake earmuffs. Benny grinned and rolled up a snowball of his own. "Oh, it's on, Rabbit!" They laughed and chased each other through the trees, snow flying in all directions. After a dozen snowballs, a tumble into a snowbank, and lots of giggling, they flopped down in the snow to catch their breath. Ruby pointed up at the sky. "Perfect snow. We should build something." "A snow bear?" Benny asked. "A snow bunny," Ruby countered. They looked at each other, then shouted together, "A snow fort!" Soon they were scooping and stacking snow with great excitement. Benny used his big paws to pack strong, thick walls, ruby-shaped windows and tunnels with her quick little hands. The forest friends stopped by to help. Squirrels carved towers, mice packed snowballs, even Marvin Mouse brought cocoa in tiny cups. By lunchtime, the snow fort was a snowy castle, complete with icicle flags and a pinecone doorbell. "This might be the best fort ever," said Benny proudly. Ruby looked around, thoughtful. "It's missing just one thing." "A snow throne?" Benny guessed. "Nope. A surprise?" Ruby whispered something to Marvin Mouse, who nodded and zipped away. Benny blinked. "You're being mysterious." Ruby winked. "You'll see." That evening, as twilight turned the snow pale purple, forest animals began arriving at the fort, bundled in scarves and hats carrying lanterns and treats. "What's going on?" Benny asked. Ruby handed him a mug of warm peppermint cocoa. "It's your snow day surprise, a celebration. You work hard all winter, Benny. It's time for some fun." Benny's eyes widened. "For me?" "For everyone, but you're the guest of honor." Lanterns glowed inside the snow fort, and soft music drifted through the trees from a raccoon string quartet. A sledding hill had been made behind the fort, and animals zipped down with joyful squeals. There were popcorn garlands strung from tree to tree, cookies shaped like stars and bears, and even a snowball toss contest. Ruby stood on a snowy crate and raised her voice. "To Benny Bear, kindest bear in the forest, best friend anyone could ask for, and the one who always makes winter feel warm." Everyone clapped and cheered. Benny blushed so hard his cheeks matched his scarf. "Aw, shucks. I just like seeing everyone happy." "Exactly," said Ruby. "That's why we wanted to return the joy." Then Marvin Mouse tugged Ruby's coat. "It's time." The animals gathered in a circle. Ruby gave Benny a gentle push to the middle. Marvin flicked a switch, and suddenly, the trees all around the snow fort lit up with hundreds of tiny twinkling lights made of firefly glass jars and crystals. The snow sparkled in 100 colors. Everyone gasped. Benny stood still, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say," he whispered. "Say let's have snow pie," whispered Ruby, grinning. Benny laughed and raised his paws. "Let's have snow pie." The animals cheered again, and the snow fort filled with chatter, laughter, and the delicious smell of winter treats. Later, Benny and Ruby sat together on a bench carved from packed snow, wrapped in a shared blanket, watching the lights twinkle above. "Ruby," Benny said softly, "this was the nicest surprise I've ever had." Ruby leaned her head on his shoulder. "You deserve it." They sipped their cocoa and watched as snowflakes began to fall again, gently, quietly, like a lullaby. The forest glowed, the snow fort stood tall, and for one perfect night, Pinecone Forest felt like the coziest, happiest place in the world. Sukision. Benny Bear and Ruby Rabbit and the Frozen Lake Mystery. The coldest week of winter had arrived in Pinecone Forest. Icicles hung like crystal chandeliers from every branch, and the rivers had frozen solid. At the edge of Frosttail Lake, Benny Bear and Ruby Rabbit stood staring at the gleaming ice. "It's frozen smooth," said Ruby, tapping it with her paw. "Perfect for skating." Benny rubbed his chin. "I don't know how to skate. Bears are more clomp than glide." Ruby grinned. "That's why I brought these." She pulled out 2 pairs of skates from her backpack, tiny ones for her, and very large ones for Benny. He looked at them. "Ruby, I have paws the size of pancakes." "You'll do fine," she said, slipping on her skates. "We'll go slow. Besides, the Frosttail Freeze Festival is tomorrow. We have to practice." They waddled to the shore and stepped carefully onto the lake. Ruby zipped ahead with grace and ease, twirling and laughing. Benny took one shaky step, then another. Wobble. "Uh-oh," he said, arms waving. "Ah, thump!" Down he went. Ruby skated back, trying not to giggle. "You all right?" Benny nodded. "Maybe skating isn't my calling." Ruby offered her paw. "Come on, let's just slide for fun." They spent the next hour slipping, laughing and scooting across the ice. Soon Benny was gliding, well, sort of. But just as the sun began to dip, Ruby stopped skating. She bent down near the center of the lake, staring at something beneath the ice. "Benny, come look at this." He waddled over and peered down. Frozen below the surface was a strange shape, round, wooden, and covered in moss. A handle stuck out from one side. "It looks like—" Benny leaned closer. "A door?" They looked at each other. "Time for another mystery," said Ruby with a twinkle in her eye. Back on shore, they fetched Ruby's lantern and Benny's snow shovel. Carefully, they cleared more of the snow off the lake's surface, revealing what looked like a wooden hatch frozen in the ice. An old cellar? A secret hideout? Benny guessed. Ruby tapped it. "Could be anything, but we can't open it until the ice melts." Benny nodded. "Then we come back in spring." Ruby frowned, thinking, "Wait, Mr. Beaver lives near here. Maybe he knows something." They hiked through the snow to Mr. Beaver's cozy dam. He was sipping tea beside a fire when they arrived. "A door under the lake," he said, adjusting his spectacles. "Ah, yes, that would be Old Pine's storage cellar." "Old Pine?" Ruby asked. Mr. Beaver nodded. "He was a wise old badger who lived here long ago. Before he moved away, he stored all sorts of things in a little underground room beneath the lake's edge. It used to be dry land, but over time the water rose and froze around it." "What kind of things?" Benny asked. "Stories say he kept winter supplies, old books, and something very special, a carved music box that played the first Frosttail Festival song." Ruby's eyes lit up. "That's perfect. We could use it for tomorrow's festival." Mr. Beaver chuckled. "Well, if you can get it open, it's yours." The next morning, the entire forest gathered at Frosttail Lake for the festival. There were snowman contests, sled races, and marshmallow toasting. As the sun warmed the ice, Benny and Ruby returned to the mysterious door with a small crowd following. With some help from the beavers and a few careful knocks from Benny's big paws, the ice finally cracked round the hatch. It creaked open. Inside, safe and dry in a wooden chest, was a beautiful carved music box shaped like a pine tree. Ruby wound it gently. A soft, tinkling melody filled the air, a warm and cheerful tune that made everyone in the crowd smile. "That's the one," said Granny Owl, "the very first Frosttail Festival song." That night, as the forest animals skated beneath twinkling lights and stars, the music box sat proudly at the center of the lake, its melody drifting on the cold air. Out, Benny sat beside Ruby near a bonfire, sipping hot cocoa. "We solved another mystery," he said. Ruby nodded. "And saved the festival, too." Benny smiled. "I'm glad I didn't give up on skating." Ruby winked. "Next time we might find a whole secret village under the snow." They laughed and clinked their cocoa mugs, already wondering what the next adventure would bring. Benny Bear and Ruby Rabbit, and the Great Spring Cleanup. The snow had finally melted in Pinecone Forest. Little green shoots peeked from the ground, birds chirped in every tree, and the air smelled like fresh rain and new beginnings. Benny Bear opened his windows wide, stretched his big arms, and sniffed the breeze. "Smells like spring," he said with a smile. Just then, thump, 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 came a knock at his door. Ruby Rabbit burst in, holding a basket and wearing a daisy behind her ear. "Happy Spring Cleanup Day," she announced. Benny blinked. "Is that today?" Ruby grinned. "Every year the animals tidy up the forest together, picking up litter, clearing fallen branches, planting flowers. I signed us up." Benny scratched his head. "I thought spring was for naps." Ruby laughed. "You can nap after we rake, sweep, sort, and shine." They started in the village square where Mayor Badger was handing out brooms, gloves, and colourful leaf bags. "Let's see," Ruby read from the job list. "You and I are assigned to Buttercup Trail." "Perfect," said Benny. "That's where the bees build their hives." The trail, however, was a mess. Twigs and leaves were scattered everywhere, and a few old snack wrappers fluttered in the breeze. "Who left all this behind?" Benny asked, picking up a juice box. Ruby frowned. "Some visitors must have forgotten to clean up before winter." They got to work, Benny sweeping with a huge broom and Ruby hopping from one spot to the next with her grabber tool. "Look!" Ruby held up a shiny button. "Treasure!" Benny chuckled. "Maybe we'll find a whole suit by the time we're done." After an hour, they had 4 full bags and a tidy trail. "Teamwork makes the trail work," Ruby said, high-pawing Benny. They headed toward the next site when they heard a faint buzzing sound. "Bees?" Benny asked. The buzzing grew louder. Then, boom! A loud crash echoed through the trees. They rushed towards the sound and found a large branch had fallen across the edge of the trail, right on top of a hollow tree stump. "Oh no!" Ruby gasped. "That's the bees' hive." Sure enough, a group of very upset bees buzzed frantically around the crushed entrance. "We've got to help them," Benny said. Ruby nodded, but carefully. They approached slowly, humming softly. Benny gently lifted the branch while Ruby peeked inside. "The hive's still okay, but the opening is blocked." Ruby rummaged in their supplies and pulled out a small wooden sign and a handful of flower seeds. "I have an idea." First, Benny rolled the log a few feet to give the bees space. Then Ruby carefully painted a sign that read, "Bee crossing watch your paws." Together they cleared a path to the hive and planted wildflowers nearby to make the bees feel welcome again. As they worked, the bees slowly calmed down. One of them, a big, fuzzy bumblebee with a purple stripe, hovered near Ruby's ear and buzzed a gentle thank you. "You're very welcome," she said. By afternoon, the trail looked fresh and blooming. Benny and Ruby returned to the square, tired but proud. Mayor Badger looked at their cleanup chart. "Buttercup Trail. Completed. And the bees are happy. Excellent work." He handed them a little blue ribbon that read, "Spring Stars." "Woohoo!" cheered Ruby. That evening, the forest animals gathered for a picnic in the meadow. Tables were full of fruit pies, veggie wraps, and fresh lemonade. Garland made from vines and blossoms hung in the trees, and music filled the air. Benny lounged on a picnic blanket, munching a honey muffin. Ruby sat beside him, watching fireflies flicker in the grass. "Today was a good day," Benny said, lying back. Ruby nodded. "A little work, a little adventure, and a lot of happy bees." "Next year," Benny said sleepily, "maybe we clean up 2 trails." Ruby laughed. "Only if you promise not to nap in the compost pile again." They giggled, clinked lemonade cups, and looked up at the stars peeking through the evening sky, knowing that every season brought new adventures. And always new reasons to help.